If this video found you, something within you was already ready for it. It wasn't the algorithm, it wasn't luck, it was resonance. And before you dismiss this sentence as just another pretty quote from the internet, I need you to understand what it truly means. Because most people spend their entire lives believing that encounters are accidents, that paths are random, that there is a self separate from the world that merely observes what happens. Carl Jung spent decades dismantling this illusion. He did not see coincidence where the modern mind sees coincidence. He saw pattern. He saw meaning emerging from the deepest structure of the psyche, something he called synchronicity, the meeting between an internal state and an external event that, together, reveal an order that reason alone could never explain. You may have clicked on this video out of curiosity, but curiosity does not come from nowhere. It is born from a fissure, from an unease you perhaps cannot even name yet, a tiredness that is not of the body, a feeling of living a life that technically works, but that emotionally does not belong to you. And it is exactly this kind of unease that opens doors that logic keeps closed. It is not chance. It is an answer. The universe, or if you prefer a less mystical language, your own unconscious projected into the world, did not bring you here by accident. It brought you because a part of you, silent and patient, has been asking to be heard for some time. And the silent parts of ourselves, when ignored for too long, begin to manifest in ways that the rational mind insists on calling coincidence. You thought of someone and that person called you. You felt you needed to change direction, and days later, a door closed on its own, pushing you exactly where you feared to go. This is not cheap mysticism. This is the psyche communicating through symbols and events what the consciousness has not yet managed to verbalize, and if you have made it this far, it is because this communication has already begun. The question is no longer whether you will awaken. The question is whether you will have the courage to listen to what is already being said. Most people confuse desire with frequency. They believe that it is enough to want something with enough intensity for reality to bend. But that is not how consciousness operates, and that is not how the psyche projects the world around you. What you attract is not what you consciously desire. It is what resonates with your predominant emotional state, with the beliefs that live beneath the surface, with the pattern that runs on a loop even when you sleep. Think of a radio station. You may wish to hear a specific song with all the strength of your will, but if the dial is tuned to a different frequency, you will continue to pick up the same signal as always, no matter how much you beg for another. Physics treats this with brutal clarity. Two systems in resonance exchange energy more efficiently than systems out of sync. A tuning fork vibrates, and if there is another one nearby, tuned to the same frequency, it also begins to vibrate, without anyone touching it directly. Life functions on the same principle. Only the instrument is not metal, it is emotion. It is internal state. It is the background tone you carry even when you pretend to smile. This explains why people who carry emotional scarcity continue to attract relationships of scarcity, even when changing partners, cities, or jobs. It is not bad luck. It is that the internal frequency has not changed, only the external scenery has been repainted. The social media algorithm is today the most accessible metaphor for this. It learns what you interact with the most, what holds your attention, what activates your nervous system, and begins to deliver more of the same, creating an invisible filter that seems like objective reality, but is in fact a refined mirror of your own pattern. But the oldest and most powerful algorithm is not in your cell phone, it is in your psyche, and it processes, selects, and amplifies exactly what resonates with the deepest beliefs you hold about who you are and what you deserve. Changing scenery without changing frequency is like switching channels while continuing to watch the same soap opera with different actors. It is not the world that needs another try. It is your internal frequency that needs a new tuning. It was precisely to teach this tuning in a practical and daily manner that I prepared the Código de Despertar for you. It is not just another motivational course full of random quotes. It is an inner map based on Jungian psychology, built for the next 60 days, with a daily lesson containing keys, questions, and declarations that reprogram, step by step, the frequency you have been emitting without realizing it. You read, Perform a small but precise micro-action and record the reflection in your journal, creating a real trail of transformation, not just more content consumed and forgotten. It is the practical path to individuation, to stop being the edited version of yourself and finally begin to become who you really are. The first step is pinned in the main comment of this video. If something inside you already knows that this is the moment, leave a simple comment right now. Eu escolho minha frequência. This gesture, no matter how small it may seem, is the first conscious act of reprogramming. Now come back inside with me, because understanding resonance without understanding the mirror is like learning theory without ever playing the instrument. The world out there, the people who treat you in a certain way, the opportunities that appear or vanish, the tone of the conversations you attract, none of this is random. It is a reflection. Jung said with an almost clinical coldness that everything that bothers us in others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. He wasn't being poetic. He was describing a real psychological mechanism. We project onto the external world what we cannot or do not want to recognize internally. If you attract people who ignore you, perhaps there exists, on some deep level, an old belief that you are dispensable. If you attract environments of excessive demands, perhaps there is an internal voice installed decades ago that has also never given you a rest. The world is not chasing you. It is returning to you, with uncomfortable precision, what you project without knowing you project. This is no reason for despair. It is reason for surgical attention. Because if external reality is a reflection of internal identity, then trying to fix only the reflection is the most exhausting and useless exercise in existence. It is like fighting the mirror because you don't like the reflected posture. Instead of simply straightening your spine, you can change jobs 10 times trying to escape an abusive boss and continue attracting abusive bosses, because the pattern that attracts this type of dynamic was not in the job. It was in you, in a silent belief that your value depends on the approval of authority figures. The person who changes their internal identity does not need to negotiate every external detail. Reality on its own begins to reorganize itself around the new frequency because it stops finding resonance with the old pattern. It is uncomfortable to admit this. It is much more comfortable to blame the traffic, the government, the X, the market. But comfort and truth rarely live in the same sentence. When you understand this, some relationships start to cool down on their own without drama, without fighting, simply because they no longer find an echo in your new frequency. This is frightening at first. It feels like a loss, but it isn't. It is filtering. It is life delicately removing everything that only existed to feed a version of you that is being left behind. And it is precisely at this point when a person realizes that changing the interior is more urgent than changing the exterior, but doesn't know how to start this change in a structured way, that most people give up and return to autopilot. That is why I prepared the Código do Despertar for you, so that this turning point does not depend on isolated willpower, but on a daily, guided 60-day process built upon the very pillars Jung used to explain individuation. Each lesson returns to you, with precise questions, the mirror you have avoided looking into. Each declaration reprograms, with conscious repetition, the frequency you emit without noticing. It is not theory, it is practice, recorded day after day in your own transformation journal. Access is in the first pinned comment. Comment now Eu escolho minha frequência and secure your place on this crossing before your usual resistance convinces you to postpone it again, returning to what truly matters. If reality is a reflection, signs are the subtitle of that reflection. Many people confuse synchronicity with superstition, and that is where they lose the entire message. Repeating numbers on the clock, a specific song playing at the exact moment you thought about giving up, a name that reappears 3 times in different contexts in the same week, an encounter that seemed impossible to happen, yet happened anyway. None of this is random noise to those who observe with enough attention. It is the psyche, in dialogue with the world, underlining what the conscious mind has not yet fully processed. Jung saw in these events proof that there is an underlying order connecting the internal and external worlds, something he described as a causal, meaning it does not follow the logic of cause and effect that reason demands, but still carries meaning. The most common mistake is to treat signs as confirmation of comfort. This is a sign that I should stay. This is a sign that it will work out. No. A genuine sign rarely confirms what you already wanted to hear. It usually disturbs, disrupts, forces a pause. If you see the same number repeatedly right after making a decision you know deep down is cowardly, that is not luck. It is an invitation to reconsider. The language of the universe, if we prefer to call it that, does not speak in applause, it speaks in interruptions. It breaks the autopilot precisely at the moments when you most need to wake up from it. Learning to read these signs is not about magic. It is about developing enough sensitivity to notice patterns that the busy mind normally ignores, because it is trained to operate in survival mode, not in deep perception mode. This requires practice. No one is born fluent in this symbolic language. It is daily training, deliberate attention, the habit of asking, in the face of every uncomfortable or insistent event, what is this trying to show me about myself? Most people spend their lives surrounded by signs and see none because they are too busy reacting to the surface of events to notice the pattern behind them. Speaking of patterns, no person enters your life by chance. Every relationship, even the briefest, even the most painful, carries a pedagogical function that the conscious mind takes time to recognize. Jung spoke of the soulmate not as a sugary romantic concept, but as the encounter with what is incomplete within us, projected onto someone else. The relationships that hurt the most are usually the ones that teach the most, because they force to the surface exactly the pattern we were avoiding facing alone. You repeat the same type of partner, the same type of toxic friendship, the same type of betrayal, not because destiny is cruel, but because the lesson continues to be presented in different forms until it is finally assimilated. This is not punishment. It is the pedagogical insistence of the psyche, which prefers to repeat the exam until you learn, rather than let you continue carrying a wound disguised as a coincidence. And here is something that most completely ignore. The words you use about yourself are not just description, they are active construction. I've always been like this. It never works out for me. I'm lucky with this. Each sentence repeated internally functions as an instruction given directly to the system that organizes your perception of reality. You are not just describing what is already true, you are reinforcing, with daily repetition, what will continue to be true. Changing your internal identity is not toxic positivity. It is not faking happiness. It is re-educating your internal dialogue with the same discipline of someone rehabilitating an atrophied muscle, slowly with conscious repetition, without expecting immediate results but trusting the cumulative process. And it is precisely at this point that change ceases to be linear and often becomes sudden. Western culture has taught us that evolution is always gradual, one step at a time, decades of effort for any relevant transformation. But quantum physics describes another phenomenon, the quantum leap, the moment an electron changes orbit instantly without passing through the intermediate space. It is simply in one state, and in the next instant, it is in another. There is no visible trajectory between the 2 points. The psyche, when it changes identity consistently and deeply, operates in a similar way. It is not that gradual effort doesn't matter. It is the necessary foundation, but the external result often does not appear bit by bit. It collapses all at once, when the internal frequency finally stabilizes in the new pattern. You work internally for weeks without seeing visible change, and suddenly in a single day everything reorganizes. The proposal that wasn't coming arrives, the right person appears, the missing clarity sets in. It wasn't sudden luck. It was the delayed consequence of an internal change that had already been consolidated beforehand. It is exactly at this turning point when a person understands that transformation happens first inside and only then manifests outside, but still lacks a structured method to sustain this internal change consistently, that most people go back to sabotaging themselves, out of a lack of structure, not a lack of willpower. That is why I prepared the Código do Despertar for you, 60 days of daily lessons that build, brick by brick, the new identity that needs to be consolidated before the external leap occurs. It is not about waiting for motivation. It is about guided repetition, question after question, declaration after declaration, until the new frequency ceases to be an effort and becomes your nature. The first pinned comment has the path to enter. Comment now. Eu escolho minha frequência, and start today to build the foundation for your own quantum leap. Before another 60-day cycle passes without any real change. There is, however, an obstacle that sabotages more transformations than any external circumstance. Fear disguised as rationality. The conscious mind is an expert at creating sophisticated justifications to keep you exactly where you are. It calls prudence what is actually paralysis. It calls careful analysis what in practice is just another month of delay. Fear rarely presents itself as fear. It presents itself as a list of plausible reasons not to act yet. I need to study more. It's not the right time. I'm still missing resources. Some of these reasons are even true in isolation, but together they form a pattern, that of a mind that prefers the security of known stagnation to the risk of real transformation. Intuition works in a completely different way. It does not argue, it does not construct paragraphs of justification, it does not need logical approval to exist. It simply knows, with a silent clarity, that the rational mind often tries to stifle because it cannot explain it in terms that fit into a spreadsheet. Jung considered intuition one of the psychic functions most neglected by modern culture, precisely because it does not obey the linear logic that traditional education values. But it is exactly this function that allows one to recognize in the blink of an eye when an opportunity is real and when a person is untrustworthy, long before any rational evidence confirms it. Developing intuition is not abandoning reason. It is stopping letting reason alone decide everything, especially at times when it is being used as a sophisticated disguise for fear. Every time you feel that tightness in your chest before taking an important action, there are two possibilities. Either it is intuition warning of real danger, or it is fear defending the territory of the comfort zone. Learning to differentiate between the two is one of the most valuable skills a person can develop, because most opportunities in life do not wait. They appear once at the right time, and you either recognize and act, or you watch the window close while your rational mind is still organizing arguments against it. You can close this video now and go back exactly to where you were, putting off the decision, repeating the same pattern, waiting for a more obvious, more comfortable, less demanding sign. You will continue to attract the same type of circumstances because the frequency does not change on its own. It changes with practice, with repetition, with a decision sustained day after day. Or you can accept that this video was not a coincidence, that the restlessness that brought you here is the same restlessness that the Código do Despertar was created to transform into clear direction. 60 days. One lesson per day. Keys, questions, declarations, and a journal where your own transformation is recorded, proof that you are no longer just waiting for life to change, you are changing the frequency that organizes everything life returns to you. The guide is in the first pinned comment. The illusion of coincidence is over. The choice, as it has always been, is yours.